In 1872, in a quiet town just outside Boston, a young woman stood in front of a locked schoolhouse door, holding a stack of papers that would never be read. That morning, her dream had been officially denied, not because she wasn't qualified, not because she lacked passion, but because she was a woman. Her name was Clara Whitmore, and the man who shut that door? Professor Edwin Harrow, the most respected educator in the county. Clara had grown up believing that knowledge was sacred. Her father, a factory worker who can barely read, had spent his evenings tracing letters with her by candlelight. "Education," he would whisper, "is the one thing no one can steal from you." She believed him. By the age of 19, Clara had mastered Latin, mathematics, and literature, subjects rarely taught to women at the time. When she applied for a teaching position at the prestigious Harrow Academy, she knew it was a long shot, but she also knew she was more qualified than half the men already working there. Professor Harrow didn't even look at her credentials. He laughed. Not cruelly, not loudly, just enough to let her know she didn't belong. He told her that educating women beyond domestic skills was dangerous, that too much thinking made women unstable, that her ambition was misplaced. Then, in a symbolic gesture meant to end the conversation forever, he tossed her carefully handwritten lesson plans into the fireplace behind his desk. The pages burned, and Clara said nothing. She didn't argue, she didn't cry. She simply watched as months of preparation turned to ash. Then she thanked him for his time and walked out. That was the moment revenge began. But Clara's revenge would not be loud, it would not be violent, it would not be cruel, it would be patient. Over the next year, Clara began teaching in secret, not in a grand academy, but in her family's barn. Word spread quietly among factory workers, immigrants, and young women who had been told their dreams were improper. By winter, she had 12 students. By spring, she had 30. She charged almost nothing. Sometimes payment came in bread, sometimes in coal for heating, sometimes in nothing at all. Clara didn't just teach reading and writing. She taught confidence. She taught critical thinking. She taught young women how to ask questions, something society feared more than anything. Meanwhile, Harrow Academy continued as it always had. Wealthy boys recited memorized passages. Discipline was strict. Innovation was non-existent. Professor Harrow often mocked the idea of women's education during public lectures. He called it a fad, a distraction, a waste of resources. But something unexpected was happening. Clara's students were outperforming the town's boys in community examinations. Factory owners began noticing that women trained under Clara managed accounts more accurately. Local newspapers printed small praises about the Whitmore method. And then, in 1875, everything shifted. A statewide education reform committee announced it would be reviewing all academies for modernization. Schools that failed to adapt risked losing funding. For the first time in his career, Professor Harrow felt pressure. The committee requested innovative teaching models. They asked about inclusion. They asked about critical thinking frameworks. Harrow had none. Clara had all of them. When the committee arrived in town, they didn't just visit Harrow Academy. They visited the barn. What they saw shocked them. Young women debating philosophy, children solving complex equations, immigrant workers reading fluently after 6 months of study. It wasn't chaos, it was brilliance. Within months, Clara Whitmore was offered official funding to expand her program into a formal institution. She accepted. But here's where the revenge became unforgettable. The Reform Committee also informed Harrow Academy that it would need new leadership to survive the changing times. And they recommended one name, Clara Whitmore, the same woman whose lesson plans had once been burned in his fireplace. Professor Harrow wasn't fired in disgrace. He was offered retirement, a quiet exit. The world would say it was modernization, but Clara knew. Revenge had arrived, not through destruction, but through undeniable excellence. On her first day as head of the academy, Clara did something remarkable. She kept Harrow's desk exactly where it was. She kept the fireplace, and above it, she placed a framed document, her original teaching philosophy, rewritten from memory. Underneath, a small plaque read, "Education cannot be burned." Professor Harrow attended the reopening ceremony, older now, quieter, watching as young women filled the halls he once guarded so fiercely. Clara greeted him politely. No bitterness, no sarcasm, no anger. Because true revenge doesn't always scream. Sometimes it simply succeeds. By 1882, Whitmore Academy became one of the first co-educational institutions in the region. Graduates went on to become writers, lawyers, reformers. Clara never married. She dedicated her life to learning and teaching. When she passed away at the age of 67, newspapers didn't describe her as vengeful. They described her as visionary. But history remembers the fire. Not the one in the fireplace, the one in her heart. And perhaps that's the greatest revenge of all. Not hurting those who doubted you, but building something so powerful that their doubt becomes irrelevant. Because sometimes the best way to answer humiliation is with legacy.